You're listening to the Let Over Time podcast with David Sargent and Korey Bartos. It is October 1st, and it is the beginning of spooky season. And this is the second time we've started this episode. How are you doing, man?
It's the beginning of spooky season. It's rather warm, wouldn't you say? You agree. Let's move on. I'm drinking an Ethiopia Harar, and I was going to make a cortado, but I looked in the fridge and there was no milk. So I'm drinking espresso, and it's great.
That's fair. I have so much milk because I am after 1 week of hitting like 250 grams of protein a day, and it's brutal. So I drink a lot of shakes.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it is spooky season. I am not stoked about the heat like we had discussed in the first time we tried rolling, but it's starting to make like a pretty wild like summer fall combo outside in Keizu. Like we've had a little bit of rain here and there, but then we have these wonderful days that are like super cool, like fall mornings. I'll get like 2 hours of like beaming sunlight where you're like, oh, perfect, vitamin D. And like it'll be at like 2 p.m. And then I'll have like still a pretty decent like length evening. I think it starts to get dark around like 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then it gets really cool again and it's like a 60-degree night. So if it was like this for several months a year, I would be in absolute heaven. This is pretty ideal for kind of doing everything. You know, I love my chill, cool mornings with hot coffee, and then I can still go out and shoot in a t-shirt and stuff for work during the day. And yeah, it's pretty great.
See, I've had the opposite. There's been a couple of mornings doing the markets where it starts off rather mild and kind of balmy and has gotten cooler until the afternoon. And that's real weird, and I don't like that.
That's fair. That's probably pretty good for people wanting warm coffee, though.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, that's fair. But yeah, what have you been up to? What have you been shooting?
So I don't remember if we talked about it in the last show, but I did get time finally to do some product photography with the product that I was given from the other vendor at the Boyne City Market.
Yeah.
And it is a table condiment. It's called tomato butter. And there was 4 jars that I was able to shoot. Did we talk about this?
You mentioned that you were going to do it,
okay,
but you had not yet gotten to shooting it.
Yeah, so the night I did it, I posted a couple stories just showing like a super simple setup with cheap light that I've had forever, my key light that I use here with this setup, and that was it. I turned off all the house lights and I just lit a section of my kitchen countertop like I do often for my coffee stuff, but I swapped all the coffee items out for just like produce in the background, and then what I did was I made a dish using the product. I think it's called bruschetta. It's just a simple like toast with cheese and their table condiment of tomato butter, which is it honestly, it tastes like a super fancy like pizza sauce.
Sure.
So it worked out pretty well for that. I didn't get time to edit, but I culled all the ones I wanted to edit. And I like what I see so far. So the lighting certainly could have been better with more of it and some diffusion that I didn't really so there was some diffusion going on, and I'll talk about that because it was actually interesting, but it could have certainly been better. So it's a little harsh. I'm hoping that editing can smooth some of that out. So one of the ways I tried to diffuse light in this scenario, I'll try to set the scene a little bit. So off to the left side of my camera, 45 degrees, a little bit just like a couple inches above the product, I had that strong focused light. And what I did was I had this translucent thick plastic cup, and I just put the cup over the light, and it pretty well diffused the light, but it wasn't perfect. And then my key light was, I think it was in this case above, so I put it in my cupboards and then just kind of had it straight down, which I think worked out pretty well. So that whole shoot took me like 2 hours at night. Nobody was awake, so I was able to kind of do whatever I wanted, and I made some food, and I think it looks pretty good. That's the shooting I was able to do. I did also go to Marquette, but if you had any shooting, we can talk about the Marquette stuff later.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds dope though. I'm excited to see some of that. I found that like I'm often trying to do so bare minimum when I'm like kind of impromptu shooting that I'll use a bunch of tiny lights and then struggle diffusing them. And it's come to my realization recently that like the very next paycheck I get, I need to order at least like 2 decent continuous lights for my house because
Yeah.
I'm dying. I tried to do several different shoots recently with like some cupcakes, and I put one in my story even though I didn't like anything from the shoot. I just took like the best one and made it work just so I could like rep my friend John's wife's wonderful bakery. But yeah, I struggle. A lot of white T-shirts, a lot of hoping a little tiny, MC whatever Amaran light from, Aperture worked.
Yeah.
And then I have these like stupid little LED. I actually use them to light this that I got from a really bad like white light box thing a while ago. And they're kind of handy, but there's not output. And often I think, especially beginners who just don't have access to stuff yet, really underestimate just how much light and how much diffusion it takes to make something look truly soft.
Definitely.
Softening small lights still isn't very soft. The larger and closer a soft light gets, the more it actually just falls well and doesn't create harsh shadows and stuff. And it's my laze has been getting to me recently because I just like, dude, just go get a couple of like, it's not that expensive. I waste more money on stupid stuff than it would cost me to get like 2 very solid continuous lights, because I don't always want to use flash.
Yeah.
I'm a video guy, and I like to try to just be able to exist in a scene and move stuff around and just leave the lights the way they are.
You said something that resonates, that when I was doing this, I don't do this ever, product photography, really. I felt like a total beginner. Like, I've been shooting for 12, 13 years in general, and I think I've been pretty good at shooting what I like to shoot for a long time. But this made me feel like I was back to square one, trying to set things up.
Yeah, and it's just weird, right? Because like, especially if you're outdoors, which I feel like a lot of your detailed product shots probably that you've naturally done have been when you're camping and stuff like that,
Mhm.
which is like the environment's going to be well lit in the way that you want it to be anyway.
Yeah.
But once you get into like trying to control a light, you go, oh yeah, I don't have any idea what I'm doing. I don't do this ever.
Yeah, that's why there's entire careers just for that.
Yeah, I mean that's most of what I do for work, right? Like I do a lot of stuff outside with people like shooting and stuff like that, but it's a lot of the products we make and the things we do on tables with a bunch of lights at work. Like I do that like every freaking day. So I'm pretty good at it, and then I come home where I don't even have the stuff I'd prefer to have for that. I really make some janky stuff work for work like every single day. But I have a lot more than I have at my current apartment. So, I'm slowly but surely gonna kind of deck out the room. I've kind of mentioned that I want to set it up as a studio for product photos and stuff like that, but it's got to happen like next paycheck because I'm just not being productive. And the excuse at this point is just like I don't have even the basic stuff. Like if I had a couple of can lights still, which I don't because I got rid of all that stuff when I moved to Florida originally, I'd be able to do a lot more, but like I don't even have Home Depot can lights right now. So like, I can't do crap. It's rough. And then sidebar, this living space that I have my office kind of set up in, it has 2 lights. One is like an LED panel like canned into the ceiling, and one is a ceiling fan. Both lights are different colors. The I can't change the ceiling built-in one because it's one of those little LED panels, and to flip on the ceiling fan, that light has to be on. It's like wired so poorly. So what I did is I
might as well just black it out.
That's what I did. I pulled the glass out and I filled it with tin foil.
There you go.
And then I was like, oh. So like there's one light like no longer working in the place.
Perfect.
Just like eating energy for no reason when I want a ceiling fan on.
Well, if it really is LED, it shouldn't be that bad.
But power's power, baby. I'm paying all my own bills now. I'm not freeloading. So, but yeah. So what was that last weekend? I guess another little sidebar, we have decided to go kind of every other week now, just so we can actually get some things settled. So we decided last weekend not to shoot, which was good because I was ultra freaking busy. But we hung out, my friends Evan and Hope and I hung out with John from Loot Energy. Shout out Loot Energy. Just kind of to kick it because we're all friends, and to get some photos for Loot, just like some promotional stuff, just to get, some more content in the in his, stuff. So basically we like went over to his place. We threw some like throwing knives and tomahawks and stuff. He's got like a butcher block and like a nice little thing to do that. Drank some Loot Energy, hung out. And then, so the night before, Evan and Hope had babysat their daughter, one of the most adorable kids I've ever seen in my life. Like there are few children more adorable. Like up there with, your daughter and a couple of the other kids that are just like painfully adorable. Like they just own you, right? They're just so sweet that no matter what they say, you just do what they do because they're the boss.
Yeah.
And so she woke up Saturday morning and Evan and Hope were gone. Like they put her to bed, and then she was devastated that they were gone the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So we were over there, but she was out with her mother while we were hanging out with John. And then we decided that to get some more natural lit stuff, we were going to use Evan and Hope's sunroom to get some photos.
Cool.
And so we had planned, we were like getting ready to leave, but his daughter and wife were like right around the corner. And so like 20 minutes before we decided to leave, John had told them that we're all hanging out. So she was excited to see Hope and Evan. And like we're in the driveway leaving, and they say like we're all leaving, and this child is devastated. Like I feel horrible thinking about her face when she was like, "You're leaving."
Yeah. I
can't remember how old she is. She's very young. She's like 3, I think, 2, 3. But super smart kid. And then we're like, I mean, we can hang out and play for a little bit. And then she just like, okay. So then
I'm very familiar with those types of conversations.
Oh, I'm sure, dude. Your daughter is like hilarious, man.
Yeah.
So she's
and now
definitely...
my son's right there too.
Yeah. And so we start playing, and she has a maraca, and she gives it to Evan, and Evan in the past has just ran around with her like a goober with this maraca.
Yeah.
And then so she was chasing him, and then he was chasing her. Then everybody was just basically following her, and they were just calling it parade time or whatever. Oh. But then we just gave everybody Loot Energy.
Wow.
And then I was just like taking some photos, and then she was like, first she went over and she collected all of them and put them on the table. The wild thing is she put them all on the table, all of the labels perfectly in line.
Oh, perfect.
And I was like, oh, she's a marketer. Let's go, dude. And then, I think it was Hope. She was like, I'm pretty thirsty. Can I get one of those Loot Energy? So she grabs one, ran it over, went and grabbed another one, grabbed one for everyone. It was the freaking most adorable thing ever. But then obviously we crushed her soul and we left just a little bit later. But
as you have to, eventually.
But yeah, it was fun to just shoot, like kind of chill and fun. And then we pulled out some of his wife does some of the best cupcakes I've ever had in my life, and she's called Emma the Baker, and they gave me a handful, and we used some for and we used them for some shoots, but just kind of some stuff for like friends hanging out and things like that. But cool. Definitely good for, I'll steal Daniel Milner's recent thing, like photo fitness, right? Like shooting something you don't normally do. I don't normally shoot like a young kid with the family. I'm not doing like family, like playing and stuff kind of photos. But it's really good to like jumpstart your mind and be like, oh, I'm in a totally different thing, and now I have to like interact with this kid while I'm shooting, and I got to watch my potty mouth, and I got to be it's just a totally different thing. So it really pushes you outside of that and breaks kind of like the comfort mold that you build for yourself over weeks at a time. And
I can totally relate. I actually just got off the phone with a client that is setting up a senior session with me and her daughter next Sunday. And if you follow my work at all, you might know that I do like one senior session once a year, once every 2 years. It's not something that I market. It's not even something that I technically really want to ever do, because in the past I've had senior sessions that have gone really well, and then I get mixed results from like the parents because they had different ideas in their head. This was many years ago before I really established myself as a certain type of photographer. But now I take only the jobs that I really want to do, which is a fantastic position to be in.
Sure.
And I do like one basically a year, where the parents are like, I know you do all this landscape stuff. I know you're real creative with like the way you approach like environment stuff. Will you work with my kid? And they really like the outdoors. Those types of scenarios, I'm like, yes, I will do that
Sure.
as long as you give me like full creative control, and like I can really get to do this the way that I think does everyone the best. You know what I mean? So I had
Sure.
just had that conversation. It was just like, hey, I've been following your work for years. I've known her mother, this person, for like 12, 13 years now. And she was like, I know that you work with the landscape stuff a lot. I'd love to set up a shoot. We're going to Fisherman's Island next Sunday. Her daughter's real artsy, loves outdoors. She's into like sketching and fashion design. So I have this real complex creative set in my head of like, okay, how do I really show all these things that she's into? Let's do a shoot outside, and we'll do like 3 or 4 outfits that are put together, because one of her like strengths and creative outlets is like thrifting really neat outfits that have like some theme to them that tie in with some of the, like the art history that she's into. So we're building this whole thing up, and I only do like these senior sessions once a year. So like I'm in that right now. Like, okay, this is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but a little bit in it as well. I'm like I'm playing to my strengths, but also doing something a little different. So I can totally resonate with that too.
Yeah, for sure. It's super good for just creativity and trying to just keep up with your skills. Because if I just shoot flat lays all day at work and then people shooting at the range, sure, I can do that all day long. Like,
Yeah.
cool. But what happens again when I haven't did a dog shoot in a while, and then somebody's like, hey, can you come like hang out and shoot my dog? And it's like, well, I'd like to. Let's give it a shot. And then I just am blowing it because I'm not in the zone and whatnot. So yeah, it's super good. I'm grateful for that, but I definitely prefer more kinetic, kind of fun, fast-paced shoots than hanging out with like a 2-year-old. But
Sure.
it's pretty adorable, so I'll take it as a win. There's some pretty good shots that just made you go, oh my gosh, somebody needs to protect this child at all costs. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I have a handful of various topics and some rumor stuff that we can start with. Would you like
me
to
to
start?
get into? Well, I was going to say I can talk about my Marquette trip too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Did you want to talk about that before we jump in?
Yeah, why don't we do that? And then
I'm struggling to remember you doing this trip, just because it's been such a chaotic like week for me.
It was also a pretty short trip.
Yeah.
So backstory on this is, my wife and I, we take a trip to Marquette every fall. Usually we make it 3 or 4 days. We've taken the kids in the past. This time it was the cabins that we stay at were a birthday gift from my mom. So she booked these for 2 nights. It was nice just to get away for a little bit. I didn't plan out much photography, but I did do some photography. So we got up there early last week, and we took the dog with us, and it was nice. We stayed for 2 nights, and on the first morning that we woke up there, I went out and did some photography on Carp River, the river that runs through the campground that we stay at. And I go there every time that we camp there because it's a beautiful place to be. It's really, really close to the cabins, literally like a 5-minute walk, and it's real secluded. So like a lot of the campers that go to this place don't even really know that they have access to this. So like 6 o'clock in the morning, no one's down there. Except on this morning, it was a little bit different. So for 2 reasons. The first reason was the water level's way low, lower than it's ever been. And if you know anything about like shooting around lots of water and different water levels, higher and lower water levels mean you have very different access to different points to shoot from. And so with a super low water level, lots of the river bend were exposed with a lot of big rocks that I was able to walk on that I never could before. And at that point, there's a pretty tight bend where I've never really been able to see down the rest of the way. And so every fall, I take this panoramic shot of the river, basically a 180-degree shot. And this year, I was able to do it a little different, where I was able to get down to the river bend spot. And from one side, on the left side, there was the view of looking down the river that I've never seen before. And the other angle was looking upriver with the typical view, but from a very different position on the river. So it was very nice to be able to pull off that shot, but have it actually be quite a different image than years past, because I try to do something a little bit different, but I love doing that type of work there. In the past, it's like seasonal changes where there's like, oh, it's raining this time, or oh, it's actually like snowy with some fall color or something along those lines. So it was nice to have a positional change this year. The other reason why it was a little different was because there actually was somebody down there, and it wasn't just like a tourist. It was somebody who was doing some fly fishing, which I thought was like really cool. So I was able to take the Sigma 50-1.4, and I asked this guy if it was okay to do some photography of him while he was fishing. And I thought, okay, this is a really cool opportunity to get something a little different. And I had some ideas in my head for perhaps the Spaces challenge that we are doing coming up here. But anyway, I took the 50-1.4 and I asked permission. He said it was cool. Got his name, got his info. I'm going to send him some shots. I did edit them, so I should send them his way. So it was really cool to get some themed shots of like somebody engaging with the river in a way that I've never really seen before. He didn't really get anything, but he was having a really good time, just the same way that I do, enjoying that space in our own way. So that was really fun. And then the only other time I took the camera out was when I took my dog for a walk down one of the trails. So I took the A7 IV, put the 20 mil on it, and just had a good time taking some portraits of him, kind of handheld with the leash on, because he's a good dog, but he has trouble listening sometimes, especially when we're outside with other people and certainly with other dogs. So very short leash, handheld, and we had a good time doing some portraits of him. Like there was like this down tree. He's really good at taking directions, like go here or go there. So I was able to like point, get up on this tree, get up on this log, and he was like, okay, and just pose for me like a perfect pet. And I was like, oh, great. So I got some cool shots of that I did edit. I'm really excited. I posted one of them already on the Good Boy Finley Instagram, but I've got more to come. So that was the only 2 times I took the camera out for Marquette. It was a great trip, and I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is this the same place that we did the workshop?
It is.
Nice. That's a cool spot. I'd like to go there again at some point. I definitely had fun bopping around that little area and kind of living in it. Maybe we'll throw some of those photos up as well, because that was a good time.
If you're around northern Michigan, especially in the UP, this place is called Rippling River Resort in Marquette. Fantastic place for renting out a cabin. They've got tent sites, and if you've got an RV and need full hookup, they've got that too. Cool nice. Place. Very family friendly.
Yeah, it was cool when we were out there. I kind of want to get into some more outdoor like fishing photography and stuff like that. Obviously, Chris Nichols from Petapixel does a ton of fly fishing and stuff like that, so I've seen content like that. But I've been following that Schaefer guy that you had send in some stuff, and he's just got like killer stuff. I've actually chatted with him a bunch because he lives like 3 miles from me.
That's funny.
So
thought he was close to you.
Yeah. He's just on the other side of like, because I'm towards Portage from Kalamazoo. He's in Portage.
Okay. Yeah.
But
cool.
Yeah, so maybe I'll get into that. I told him if he ever needs some help, because I know he does. He needs to get a lot of different stuff for some of the brands that he works for, and I was like, if you ever need any help, let me know. And he said, I might. I think he's got a shotgun he's getting eventually that he said maybe he'll need some help with. So that's kind of
that, and he's got a lot of Sony gear too.
Yeah, right on. We'll have to make some memes for sure.
Yeah.
Ooh, is that Stella, my sweet baby? Sorry, big loud Doberman barking. So I have a couple of things here. Have you looked very much at the iPhone 15 launch?
I've watched some things. I didn't dig too deep into anything.
Yeah, I don't really care either. I think it's stupid, and I hate cell phone photography, and I think my cell phone does as good as I'll need it to, and I've actually been playing with it a lot more lately, just because I use Lightroom, and I actually like kind of get into the raw photos, and it's pretty decent. I did like a weird Truman Show style set of photos the other day that a bunch of people commented on and messaged me about, where I was like at my sink and then at my computer and then brushing my teeth or whatever, and I was just playing with that.
Sure.
But Tyler Stallman, a guy I talk about on this podcast quite a lot, he has a couple of different videos where he showed, and I'll throw up his story because I screenshotted it, or I screen recorded it earlier, where it's like portrait mode, but choosing the focus point after the fact.
Like and the Lytro camera from years past.
Yeah, and it's like super good. Like the example he's using here is incredible looking. So obviously we know cell phones, if they have tons of light, are capable of really beautiful images. They're very small sensors, so they need lots and lots of light. So basically the more light you have, the higher quality your photo is going to look. But it's I think it's like Guardsman or something. I don't have it right here, but and he's like basically like a diagonal, so they're going away, and he's choosing like which person it focuses on, and it just looks nuts. Super good. But he also did a video showing the 5x lens, the new telephoto, with like the active stabilization that they offer.
Sure.
So he shoots it in log, and then he does like this big Michael Bay-esque like super telephoto like pan thing, and it's freaking great. It's super awesome. I don't yet really use my iPhone for video very much, if ever. But I'm going to assume in the next couple of years it will be a tool I use a lot more. I've been trying to implement it for stories and stuff a little bit more at work, because sometimes I just don't prefer to shoot it, but I really should, especially for the content I make at work. But being able to run an SSD on the phone,
that's what I was going to ask you.
Record,
ProRes, right?
Record externally into an SSD would be a really great way for me to just have like minimal stuff and be able to get a lot of good footage, especially because the log looks pretty good. Like Tyler Stallman's already released a couple of like LUTs for it and things like that. So it looks pretty wild. I still don't really care about cell phone stuff. I don't take it seriously at all yet, but I likely will as I get actually better at my job.
I think I was probably a little more interested than you were, only because I think I probably use my phone's camera more than you do. But I'm not an iPhone user. I do know that there's some type of technology advancement to make like the 5X possible, and supposedly really good. I'd love to get my hands on one and just like try it for myself, but I'm not in that ecosystem, and I'm not interested in getting into it anytime soon.
Yeah,
so, you said that the portrait mode, or is it outside of portrait mode that you can choose the focal point after the fact? Because the Google Pixel phones have had that for a while within portrait mode.
Sure, I don't know enough. I'm assuming in this case it's portrait mode because it's literally utilizing the like changing the depth of field from one spot to the other and like blowing it out severely. But I've never seen an example that looks this good.
Okay.
Like not even from this, I would have already showed it on the video, but I'll show it again here. I struggle to see how it looks better than anybody with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. Like some of it looks really good. Again, it only really works out really well if you have just tons of light, because as soon as you have even like 80% of the light you require, it gets super grainy and it's bad. To break down. And it's fast. But if you were in like optimal everything, man, it looks so freaking good. It's almost like, why wouldn't you just use your phone? I'd like to see how it handles non-human subjects. Sometimes, like with product stuff, it'll just choose not to blur a part. Yeah. And you're like, and like, that's why I've always never cared. I'm like, okay, well, I can't easily just paint that spot and tell you I need blur there. So like, I'm not going to use this mode because it's garbage. Every time I see a non-photographer use it and it's that bad looking, it just makes me I stopped caring about what they took a photo of because I'm like, just take a normal cell phone photo.
Yeah, so I can tell you I have experience with that every week. So at the farmers markets at like 7:30, as I get like my first brew started, like the water's boiling, I'll say, okay, time to take shots of the coffee that I brought. So I always put it in portrait mode to do that, and I'm always trying to make it so that the light is working to my benefit, but that doesn't always work out. So sometimes like the low amount of light does affect the phone's ability to pick up exactly what you want. But usually in my case, I'm like filling the frame pretty well. But there's been a couple of moments where I'll take the shot and I'll think, okay, great, and I'll go back to go post them, and one of them that I try to post is like horribly out of focus. I'm like, what did it think it was trying to focus on here? So I go back into the photos, and after the fact I can just like re-tap on the bag of coffee or whatever, and it'll like snap into focus, and I'm like, oh, you knew, like that was like that was like basically the only thing in frame, but it like grabbed like some stuff in my booth in the background or something for no good reason that's in the dark or something. I'm like, all right, that's interesting. But anyway, so it has the information and it works pretty well, but sometimes in low light it does suffer. So maybe the iPhone handles a little better.
Yeah, I mean, more often than not, I'm incredibly disappointed with the results. So I'd rather have like an underexposed bad image from a camera over just about anything my camera on my phone can do. Like I almost never look at a cell phone image and go, hell yeah. It's like,
that's interesting because I do. Often I'm surprised by how much I like some of these shots.
I couldn't even begin to care most of the time. Like, and I don't have the best phone ever, but I have a freaking iPhone like 14 Pro.
Yeah, okay.
And that is still like last year's. Like, I just don't do the Max because I hate big phones. Like, I wear skinny jeans and stuff. I don't want a giant phone.
Yeah.
If only they made a Pro version the size of the iPhone Mini, a tiny camera or a tiny phone. Oh man, I'd be in heaven.
I love mini phones too.
Yeah, I just like anytime I care more than 5 seconds to watch content, to look at a photo, no matter what it is, I'll walk over to one of my many computers. I always have a computer at work, and I often have my laptop as well. At home, I always have my computer. If I want to consume content, I don't care about my phone. I hate it. It's a phone.
Yeah.
I like when it can take good photos, so I do like having a high-end phone, and I like when my apps don't bug out, so I like having an iPhone. So that's it. That's all I wanted to do. I don't know why I decided to go on a rant there, but here we are.
Okay.
Yeah, the next topic, which could potentially take like the rest of the show, but I'm going to try and not let it. My dude, I want a ZF. I want a ZF so bad. It's the coolest camera that's come out in the last few years.
Yeah.
The 40 mil that it comes with is dynamite. Like, it's exactly the lens that I would want to just bop around. It's a 40 f2. That's plenty for just like, I'm going to throw this in a bag and go to like London with my mom, or go even like when I go to Port Huron across the state. I always take my 35 and my A7 IV. I would just take the Nikon and the 40 mil, and it would be 1000% anything that I could ever need.
Yeah.
There's just something about it.
Yeah, we've been back and forth on this for a little while now, since the release basically, and I think both you and I are on the same page about this being a desirable camera for the both of us. Yeah. And I think you'd get more utility out of its form factor. I have done I wouldn't call it research, but I've been looking at a lot of videos and reading a lot about it. And one of the things that some people are criticizing, which I guess is appropriate, is its weight. But it's because of its build.
That's what I want it to be. I want it to be an old ass film camera. Like my Zenit up there weighs like 38 pounds.
And my Fujica V2 up here, I'm like, that thing's heavy. I love holding that. It's, a heavier camera actually can be a benefit for stability reasons.
I shoot video, baby. I love a heavy camera. I like that it's thinner. And it's kind of tall. Like, it's tall like an old camera, but the grip is a little thinner. So I can fit a little bit more in my little sling bag when I carry that.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it being heavy. I don't care. I really don't care.
Honestly, from a lot of the criticisms I'm seeing are people who are talking about this camera as if this is why a wedding photographer should not buy a ZF, right? Like the ergonomics of the thing. No, you really don't want the ZF if you're holding it for 10 hours and you care about the way your hand feels at the end of the day. But you're not going to buy the ZF because of many other reasons for weddings as well. It's really not what it's for. And yes, you can use any camera for anything if you want to, but like professional wedding photographers, there's certain types of cameras they really should be considering over the ZF. But the ZF is awesome. There's a lot about it to like.
There's literally nothing to dislike about it unless you just don't want an old style camera, in which case go get a Z6 II. If you want to stay Nikon, right? Like,
oh my gosh, can I bring this up? We talked about this already, but you said Fuji does this, and I didn't realize this, that the shutter button is threaded for an old style camera release remote. I think that is just the coolest thing. So if you don't know,
this man had no idea this has been happening for years.
So I've very occasionally shot film. I didn't know Fuji did this. Korey, thank you for enlightening me. Fuji's cool for this, I guess, but I'm like nerding out about the fact that the shutter button has these threads that you can screw in a cable release from, I'm guessing, any time period that had the same form factor.
It's a mechanical device. Yeah.
A mechanical. So basically, if you don't know what this is, it's like a cord, a long cord, and on the end of it is this like shaft with this needle that pokes into the shutter, and on the other end is like a clicky thing. You just click, boom, shutter release. Nowadays there's digital versions of this, either wired or wireless, and on the Nikons that I used to shoot, it had this like terrible 10-pin connector. I could never get it to fit correctly. Sometimes I would bend the pins and it would be a pain in the butt. And the old school connections were like super reliable because it's not electronic. It's just
pushing your shutter button.
Click. If it doesn't click, you broke something, and you don't really break those. So the fact that the ZF, full frame, modern technological beast of a camera, has this threaded thing, I'm just like, okay, that to me is like they're actually appreciating the retro aspect of this camera to include that, such as Fuji did. So I'm not going to say that this is new. Fuji, thank you for doing this. But Nikon, I'm so glad to see this. I don't know why. I just love it.
Yeah, basically I think most of their cameras have the threaded shutter because everybody does the big red button on top. And that's the same
I guess
deal.
I have seen that.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just that, it is what it is. Going back to the Fuji ZF comparison, I really liked a lot of things about my Fuji XE4 that I had for a little while. And it had a joystick, even though it wasn't a good joystick. It was a joystick, so that was really awesome. But one of the things that I did hate about it was that it was so light, it felt like a toy.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was something that my mind couldn't get over. Like I felt like it was not durable. I felt very nervous to have it around like any kind of weather, anything like that. I just thought it would freaking disintegrate.
I have heard the same thing about the ZF-C as well, which is the same style of the ZF, but the ZF-C was mostly plastic from what I know. Yeah.
And then, continuing on with that, did you watch Morton Hilmer's ZF and
yes, I did.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well, my man's just hanging out all day in the rain. I want this camera.
I love it. The ambassador he got it from is like, it can handle weather, but take care of it. It's my only one.
My only
and
one,
he's out there in the rain. I think I'm taking care of it.
Yeah. He's like, it's fine. It's just
fine.
Like actively raining on it for probably hours, I imagine. It wasn't just like a short amount of time. He's out there all day. But like that was a great video for me to look at because I just went, oh my gosh, like you can still just run it with all the ZF or all the Z lenses. Really still getting a F to Z adapters, probably super, super bananas because they have some pretty decently small lenses. If you really wanted to save like money, you could go get an 85, you could go get a 50, you could probably go get a 35, and you could be shooting that whole system so affordably. You're not making any compromises on this camera unless for some reason you need redundant video recording, which I don't often really use. I like having redundant photo, but often because of how much data I just need to shoot with video, I end up not doing it redundantly. So, you just kind of eat it if you lose a card on video. But
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, the reason it doesn't do redundant video recording is because its secondary slot is a micro SD slot,
Yeah,
which is kind of a new. Is there another brand that does this? Does
not that I
Fuji do
know of.
this?
No.
Nobody has included a micro SD slot in addition to the SD card slot. So this was Nikon's way of going. We hear you. We know you want a dual card slot system, but in this form factor, this is the way it has to be.
Right. And I would rather have it and have a backup because, like, if I'm on a vacation, like, I redundantly shoot all of my photos. My video, because I generally, like, every time I stop at the hotel or whatever, I'll dump the videos. But I usually kind of just keep the photos on the camera until I can actually sit down and ingest them all into Lightroom and stuff like that. So,
Right.
Sure, it wouldn't be amazing or ideal. However, a 512 gig micro SD and a 512 gig SSD UHS-2 card, not going to be that expensive. And it's such a cheap way to get into a system.
You know what I find interesting? The fact that they worked, I'm sure the engineers of this were like, we've never seen anything like this. I'm sure they worked hard to make this work. The fact that, do you remember the launch of the Z6 and the Z7 and the just hysteria people were in about them not having dual card slots? Like the photography subculture of the internet just went wild over the fact that, oh, these are supposed to be professional cameras, but they don't have two card slots. I think it would have been totally acceptable, and I would not have had an issue at all if they did not include this micro SD slot. But I think it's very cool that they did.
Yeah. No, and I agree because, like, so what would have happened? Oh, this would be really cool, but we still can't take it seriously. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a camera that is meant for people who love photography.
Yeah.
And they tried to make it not have any compromises for people that truly love photography. You could absolutely, if I was a photography only person and didn't shoot video, I don't even see that as a compromise. Because you physically can't put two full-size SDs in it, and they still gave you a second card.
You know, I think this is a better camera that reaches more to the craft of photography rather than what the ZFC tried to do, which was to basically capitalize on the retro style of the camera, which is like fine. People want it. There's demand for that.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's got an all-metal build, which is appropriate for something a little bit higher end in this price range, but that it's got these other things that make it more usable and more attractive to people who actually just love the process of photography.
Yeah.
I think it's a really neat camera because of its certain limitations. I think it would be really fun to just use.
Yeah. I think it's going to be super killer for all the travel I'm doing. I really, really want to only take this to my trips next year. I got them. I think I have all three locked down with work. I told them these are the dates that I'm leaving next year, and whatever I got to do to make that happen, let's talk about it. But it's happening. So,
cool.
So yeah, at least right now I have London and Korea blocked off and good. I just got to find when I can go to Japan. But like, this solves a ton of issues. Like I will probably end up with some kind of standard zoom for it, but I think I'm just gonna rock that 40 mil and like the smallest standard zoom I possibly can get for it. Alternatively, I would be taking an A7 IV with a 35 and a 20-70 f4. So like,
I was going to ask you, did you already make certain moves to try and get this ZF?
No, because I don't have to yet. I'm trying to move some guitar gear as well for some things and whatnot. But I have it on my short list that I'm working. I actually, part of the reason why I didn't go gangbusters on all the coffee stuff is because I'd prefer to invest in this system sooner than later.
Sure.
So I just said, okay, I have working kettles. Let me just get like the best budget grinder so I can have coffee for the time being.
For sure.
So yeah, I'm pretty committed unless something crazy happens. I think I'm going to end up with this camera.
It's not as much of a push for me. I'm not prioritizing it, but I would not be surprised if, say, next year I had one as well. Yeah. And it would be certainly the A7C Maybe both. Who knows? I don't know. I don't really require two cameras much these days anymore. Even the video projects I'm doing, I'm not doing as much dual camera setups for some of my YouTube videos like I used to. And so maybe I would feel differently once it came down to making that decision. But I could certainly see ditching the A7C and picking up the ZF and just kind of fitting in with that 40 mil as well, because I would shoot that all day long as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly helpful that right now I've been like feeling the pain of not owning two cameras. Occasionally I can use work camera outside of work, but I try not to do that. I try to leave most of work stuff at work. So like if I was traveling to go shoot some stuff not related to work at all, I wouldn't take work's camera. That makes the investment valuable to me. And again, it doesn't do anything that the A7 IV doesn't, other than it has a slightly smaller sensor, but maybe that just means that it's a little better in low light. To be decided, but the 4K 60 is cropped, so is my 7 IV, blah, 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 all the things that I said. Like, it's fine. It's going to absolutely be fine. So, barring a couple of things that we'll probably talk about in the rumors, I'm pretty sure there's a really good shot by, like, Christmas I'll have one of these.
Cool.
Yeah. For the Nikon news, obviously we were going to talk about the like teaser video and stuff if we had shot last weekend about the Plena that came out that was released this week. I had a feeling it was going to be a 135. It makes sense. I don't really have a whole lot to say. It is every bit as good as Canon and Sony's. It's a 135 f1.8. The scripting, like the Noct-esque scripting and stuff, while it's like not super high end, is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was very strange. I wonder if they're going to continue branding certain lenses, certain prime lenses this way, because I mean, what is the cost of this 135? I didn't really look into it.
It's about $2,500, $2,490 something.
It's not Noct range. I'm sure it's, I mean, technically it's not got the types of features that the Noct has. It's not, first of its kind. So it's very interesting that Nikon chose to do this branding this way. I'm sure they just thought, putting something different on this lens and calling it something would push sales or something. But it is interesting. I wonder if they're going to continue doing that.
Yeah. Well, and like I feel like the 135 is, in the modern digital like photography era, is super under maybe appreciated or talked about.
I absolutely agree.
Back in the day, like all of the old 60s, 70s, 80s like camera bodies had 135, f3.5, f4, like those primes were on every single system.
Yeah.
And they kind of disappeared there was a big chunk of time where like it just wasn't very common. And then I think when they came up with these 1.8s, Sony and Canon, Sony's was great. I owned it for a while. It's an incredible wild lens.
Yeah, you took it up to Marquette, and I loved seeing some of those shots.
Yeah, it was a wild lens. Yeah, I mean, I took that one photo at Donnie's wedding with it that just like freaking slams, right? Like it's a beautiful lens. And I found at the time, back when I decided to get it, that I really naturally gravitate around 135 with the 70-200. So it made a lot of sense. A shame that the front element on the Sony is so heavy and the ring on the front is plastic, because it's a pain. It's a bane for sure. But there's nothing too crazy happening with this lens other than the fact that they have the rear mount is super wide. Like they kind of alluded to it being important when they first designed the Z mount. They're like, it's so huge, and then they just didn't really do anything with it. Basically what that does, as far as I could tell with what I've looked into, is all it's really benefiting is that it has optically no harsh vignette.
That's what I've been hearing too.
It corrects a lot of that because you have such a large image circle. So
I wonder if that also affects the bokeh, because I've heard from what I read that this lens has like some of the best bokeh, but honestly that's such a subjective thing anyway.
It would only affect the bokeh if the mount was wider than the aperture at its maximum, which I don't know how physically it would be, right? Like, because I mean, we've seen, people will do the fake anamorphic oval on the back of a lens, and it doesn't really matter unless that rear is, smaller than your aperture, or you're not going to see anything different or change like hugely. Light transmission and stuff, though, is all physics, and you need, openings for light to actually transmit through. So I'd love to see it, even though it's just kind of nerdy and it doesn't really matter, the transmission between the Canon Sony and this one, because I would venture to guess like it's probably at worst T2. Like I bet it's really close to a true T1.8.
Yeah, probably. But on that same note, it seems like it'd be about time for Sony to release a new version of that lens too, right? That one's been out for a little while.
I don't know, probably not. I feel like they'd have to do something buck wild to make it worth for a lot of people.
Well, I mean, on trend with them would be to make it lighter and smaller, like the other releases.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I don't see it happening because I don't know. Again, I think these are relatively niche still. I don't think there's that.
Yes, the demand would probably have to fall on how good the sales were, and maybe they just don't stack up to like the Trinity.
Well, and the 135 for Sony is new enough that I think it already has like the super dope linear motors and stuff. So it was faster than the original 70 to 200. And then the 70 to 200 Gen 2 got the motors that the 135 has. So I think it's probably pretty much as fast as it's going to be. I don't really know. It was one of the fastest lenses I had. It definitely is one of the sharpest lenses I've ever owned.
I could be wrong, but you're talking about these linear motors. I feel like I was listening to a podcast. Someone was saying that the Plena, the 135, does not have linear motors, where the new 85 from Nikon does.
Sure.
Very interesting that a kind of high-end branded lens doesn't have as good of motors for AF as something from another. I mean, it's similar. No, it's not the same price range. Is it the 85 1.2 is more like 3,800 or something like that?
Oh man, I don't even remember. It's probably expensive though.
I think it came out earlier this year, but I just thought that was interesting. It seemed like this was something super high end, and now the price doesn't exactly reflect super high end, and it doesn't have, I don't know. It's kind of mixed messaging with this like branding. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not going to be super stellar for video. The breathing on it is some of the worst I've ever seen.
I didn't look at any footage or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's super sharp. It looks super great. I don't know that I do a ton of video with it, but if you're a portrait shooter and you like fast telephotos, I mean, they needed this in their lineup. And it's pretty damn small. It's definitely, I think it's lighter than the other two competitors. So there's that. I mean, it's super light by like 50 grams or whatever. Like it's not like significant, but I think it is basically as small as you can probably make a 135 f1.8.
And it fits into the theme of Nikon being generally more centered around still shooters than video shooters, so it would make sense that they don't care as much about breathing as they do about sharpness as far as a photography standpoint goes. So I'm not super surprised to hear that.
I mean, I think the goal was to make a portrait lens that had basically no cat's eyeing, was optically as perfect as possible, very low chromatic aberration. I think I remember listening to, which again is very challenging on such a fast like telephoto. It seems neat, but it's $400 more than the other two companies. And again, I also find that it's probably pretty niche.
Yeah, probably. But it's not the lens I'm excited for. The lens I'm excited for hasn't technically been announced yet. Are we going to talk about this?
We are.
Okay. Let's hear it.
we could jump into that as well.
Let's do it, please.
So I got a handful of rumors here, and we could start with this first one, which is October 5th. Sigma has a live stream, and they're going to be potentially, I think it's more or less like for sure that they're going to be talking about the 10 to 18 f2.8 DCDN and the long-awaited Sigma 70 to 200 I'm going to assume it's going to be a sport DGDN for E mount and L mount.
Yep.
And, if they keep with all of their last releases, I have no reason to believe that they're not about to produce one of the best sub $2,000 70-200s that have ever been designed and made.
Which will be so interesting because the fact that they've had great art lenses and then the contemporary and then the sport, like these generations, these newer generations of Sigma lenses have been pretty great, nearly on par with first party for so long. But if they produce a 70-200 with all the modern manufacturing processes they have now, it's going to be so strikingly better than the previous one that they designed for DSLR systems.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a pretty incredible leap that we'll see. I bet there will be people who will be comparing, the last one to this one, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because so much time has passed. But a lot of people, myself included, have been waiting for this, and if they do not do it, I don't know what I'm going to do. If it's not a 70-200, I just can't believe it's not. It has to be.
Yeah. Again, like I said, it's long awaited. It's going to be the only third party 70-200 I think that will compete with the GM for sure. My experiences with the Tamarons aren't super high.
Yeah, same.
I don't really love the 70-180. I think they made a Mark II, and I haven't used the newest version of it, but I just don't like the build quality of those Tamarons. I've had a few now, and every single one of them has been kind of wishy-washy, and I've gotten rid of them pretty quick. So if they just nail it, like I said, your 50 mil 1.4 is one of the sharpest lenses in the industry, right? Like, if they can nail that, obviously they can probably fight breathing pretty good too, because the 70-200 design is pretty easy to like not have tons of like focus breathing. Yeah. It could potentially be one of the best lenses. Again, I'm always been a 70-200 guy, like since my 70. It's the most applicable lens for the most amount of shooting I like to do. It can knock out portraits and product photos like God tier. It's just fast enough to kind of do everything. Video, you don't really go like super wide open for video, so f2.8 is super fast for video. Yeah. It's going to be pretty nuts. I think it'll just come down to, I think it's like big success is like how crazy the like influencers go for it. 70-200 is not necessarily like an influencer lens, but if they like really kind of champion it, like if this is $18.99, dude, this is gonna be crazy. Like they just knock it out of the park if this is a $18.99 sport lens. And if it's cheaper than that, geez, like if it's like $15.99, this is gonna be nuts.
I think there's a couple of things that indicate to me that they're gonna be met with success here. One of them is the absolute premium feel and build quality of the 150-600 that I have. Yeah. And they shortly after that came out with the 60-600 or whatever that is. But both of those lenses seem to be made with like the utmost care. The manufacturing on those, the tolerances, the feel, the quality, it's all there. They've got it tightly wrapped in such a nice package now. I have to imagine that same quality and more will be put into a 70-200 properly done. I don't have any concerns that this isn't going to be a fantastic lens. It will be interesting to see how close it gets to something like the Sony version 2, and the other first parties out there. But price is going to be important. Sigma's always known that. This 150-600 was only $1,300 at launch.
$1,399, I thought.
Maybe you're right. Right. So I don't think this is going to be over $2,000, which is a great thing. But that's speculation. Right. I am excited for it, and I probably will own it. And when they release it, this will finally complete all of the lenses, I think, that I sold off when I switched to Sony like 3 years ago. So I haven't owned a 70-200 in like 3 years, and I have been missing it, let me tell you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just so versatile.
It really is.
You could get away with a bunch of if you're not particularly doing wildlife, but you're out shooting and you happen to have your 70 to 200, you're not going to be upset that you spotted a bird or something. Like, you're going to be able to like have some good reach. This will likely be decently heavy. But that's half of the battle with them making their sport lenses feel not like crap. Yeah. Because they're not like a first party lens manufacturer puts their like top tier L glass or GM glass and they make it real light. You're like, sweet. You get a real light third party lens and you're like, oh, this feels like garbage.
Yeah.
So true. I feel like you almost just like have to kind of make it heavy, because then you're like, oh, it's made of metal. It's weather sealed. Yes. It's like nuts. So like, I'm not even going to give it a slight like negative check mark for any of its weight, because I assume they're going to make it sport and they're going to make it durable. Right. It'd be really cool if the Z mount opens up for Sigma,
which I don't think is going to happen, because I still feel like, I mean, you said Z mount, so Nikon and Tamron, I feel like they have some kind of relationship that is a little more interesting than any other manufacturer camera brand relationship out there, because of like the certain weird focal lengths that Tamron has been able to put out on Nikon, but not a 70 to 200, right? Like a 70 to 180 and certain other things. So I'm not sure about that. It would be really cool to eventually have Sigmas that are real nice like that on the Z mount, especially if I end up going back to Nikon one day.
Yeah, I don't have the links or anything, but there has been talks of Canon finally opening up the RF mount and stuff like that. So I think if that were to happen, Nikon's hand would be forced a little bit. They'd be like, we're going to have to get some of these folks to drop some lenses, or else. Because like that's going to be the move on Canon and Nikon. It's like, okay, well, what can I shoot on it?
I think what I remember reading about Canon's scenario was that the speculation is that it would be on a case-by-case basis based on manufacturing.
There was a newer talk of it since you and I talked about it on here.
Yeah.
And that's probably just due to sales. It is what it is. We'll see it when we see it.
And I have no idea what I'm talking about. I just remember reading that. Interesting stuff, but pure speculation.
Yeah, I feel like they're probably likely to. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, the beginning of the YouTube days was Sigma lenses on Canon bodies.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, it's sweet. The 7200 is going to crush regardless of the release. I think the 10 to 18 is just an important lens for their 6700 and stuff. It is what it is. It's the wide. It's going to be basically f4 equivalent of like a 15 to 35 for the most part.
Just to reiterate, that's a DCDN for crop bodies.
So A6700.
That's why we're a little less excited about that, I think.
Yeah, I don't really care, but it's a really good Sigma lens to have, especially with the that's going to be the go-to for the ZV-E10 II, which I think is also rumored to come out soon, which is their crop body ZV camera with interchangeable lenses. So if you were trying to get into the vlogging thing, which I don't think people really do anymore, but like, you wanted the ultra wide zoom on one of Sony's APS-C bodies. I don't know that there's a better lens than a Sigma making a DCDN 10 to 18. That's a vibe. That's what I would get if I was going to get one of those crap bodies, is a 10 to 18 f2.8. The last rumor I have here is a couple of weeks old. I was going to talk about it last week. The A9 III with some speculation. Potential.
I know nothing, so you got to fill me in.
Potential 44 megapixel stack sensor. So thick boy. 8K 60 potentially. I don't know what this 26 FPS thing is. I'm assuming that's the photos. So 44 megapixels at 26 frames a second raw. I can tell you right now, if this thing is sub $4,500, and I can do up to 8K 60, 4K 120 with most of, if I could do 8K 30 and 4K 120 with the full width of the sensor, downsampled or bend, I don't really care, and it has S-Cinetone, that'll be the thing to make me not get a Nikon. Mm-hmm. That would become my primary camera. I don't need S-Log for a lot of what I do. I'll be honest, I don't care. If I really need S-Log, I'll rent a camera or I'll use the A7 IV. I'd be very happy with S-Cinetone only if they kind of nuke it again. And in the past, A9 cameras haven't had S-Log. They've been like photo.
Yeah.
But if they gave you an S-Cinetone profile with those specs on a stacked 44 megapixel sensor where I, am not fighting, what do you call it? Jello and stuff from, that's nuts. If it's under $4,500, that's my next camera for the next 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, do we know, do you recall what the A9 II launch price was?
I think it's about $4,500 is where the A9s kind of come in.
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, it probably will not come in under 45, but maybe pretty close.
Well, I mean, at ish.
Okay. Yeah.
If I can get a creator discount on that, but
that would be a good chunk off.
But yeah,
it sounds like a fantastic camera if those things are all true. I mean, that size sensor stacked in the way that the A9 series of cameras is traditionally positioned to be like the sports camera, right?
Yeah.
Is that right for photos?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? That a beast of a camera that can basically do it all if you don't need S-Log, and it sounds like you'd be fine without it.
Yeah. If it
I would also be considering, but I'm not in that price bracket really for bodies most of the time.
Yeah.
But there's definitely people who are. So it's enticing.
That's full enthusiast for sure. But that's the one and done for me. Like I said, 90% I'm on S-Log and I just don't care.
Right.
It's super fast. It has 44 megapixels, which is almost, about 10 more than what we have now. And I do miss having 61, so I'll appreciate it. But then just have a fast readout.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that your job would benefit greatly over using the A7 IV for some of the things you guys do at the range and things like that?
Definitely. I don't think they're going to buy one. I'd have to get it myself for myself.
You don't think you could convince them to just trade up?
No, because I can get the job done with the camera that I have.
Yeah, sure.
So you couldn't convince them. I would rather them put money into other stuff, honestly. It is what it is.
If you're saying that, then that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's not a shot. I could. I like to push some buttons and get some things, but no chance I talk John into dropping $5,000 on a camera.
I only say that because you could probably still get an easy 1,800 out of an A7 IV, if I had to guess.
Yeah, probably. And you never know, because in a year from now. Once I get the studio set up at work and we really start making the push towards more content and doing stuff in-house, maybe there will be budget again where we go, oh, we actually have to invest in our content. Right now, we're really not there.
I was just curious if you thought this camera would be a whole lot better to use on the range or something. It
totally would be the camera for work, but it would take a lot.
Have a stacked sensor for high-speed action scenarios is really a nice benefit.
I would be crushing it. That would be, anyway. I want it desperately to have. I don't think I'm asking too much for it just to have S-Cinetone and then be those specs. If they somehow make that happen, I'm going to be very stoked.
So is the dream scenario one day A9 III ZF?
Maybe, like I said, I really like the idea of the ZF because it doesn't really compromise anything and it makes a really cool camera. But I could just take my 35 and my 20-70 with my A7 IV to all my trips and be perfectly fine too.
Sure.
That's not a problem for me at all.
Yeah. Totally.
But this is in the world where there's not a camera right now I would buy over my A7 IV. All of them have compromises. Every single one of them, I'm not willing to deal with the compromises. So unless the last rumor I actually have that I don't know that I put. Oh yeah. So the last rumor I have here is major A1 updates on the horizon, right?
Uh-huh.
So if they actually give the A1 all of the updates from stuff, does that mean that the A7S III might get some of it? Maybe not. I don't really care. But does that also mean that the A7S IV is definitely not coming next year? Probably.
Yeah.
It would be really surprising to me at this point in time to see an A7S IV next year.
Right.
So the potential for me to find a camera that does what I need better than my A7 IV, it's just the A9 III. but I need two cameras. Like I really benefit from all my personal projects having multiple angles, having two cameras, and I just don't right now.
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of the vibe. I'm watching that very closely to see what's true, what's not. I know I think rolling shutter is one of the biggest deals to me.
Yeah.
Like it really is a pretty big deal to me.
And it's quite noticeable on the A7 IV.
Yeah, but it's way worse on like the A7R5, which would be the only other camera that I find compelling.
Yeah.
So in order to have a second camera, I need a 24 megapixel A7S IV, or I need this camera to work out. And God forbid they put freaking S-Log on it. Yeah. Because if it's just good to go and it's $4,500, like I'm gonna buy it. Mm-hmm. If it's even somehow better than what they're rumoring, then it's just the camera. Like, and then cameras are just perfect, and we don't have a podcast anymore. We'll only be talking about making stuff, which will be awesome.
Hey, that would actually benefit. Sure.
So, but that's pretty much where I'm at with it. It's an exciting deal. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So now that we're doing it every other week, the very next episode will be talking about our photo share. Because we'll talk to you in 2 weeks from now. Our photo share topic is spaces, whatever that means to you. Physical spaces, mental spaces, interiors, exteriors, cars, compartments. I don't know what that means to you, but if you would like to share images with us to look at during our podcast, please send them to lotpodsubmissions@gmail.com. Link is always below, or the info is always below. But we'll share them and we'll talk about some cool stuff. I'm excited about it. This is a pretty cool topic. If you're still listening, we definitely love you. We would love for you to share this with a friend that you think would benefit from it and likes photography. We would love if you would give us a review on Spotify and Apple Music or Apple Podcasts and soon to be dead Google Podcasts.
Oh.
And
Google. I am the only person I know that uses Google Podcasts. Google, why did you do this? If you don't know, Google is killing Google Podcasts, and I'm sad about it, but oh well, whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all.
I'm not surprised. I hate it. I'm not surprised. But
he sent it to me this last weekend, and I just went, lol.
Of course.
So, because I went, well, yeah.
They're integrating podcasts into YouTube Music, though, so like, okay. Whatever.
Oh, by the way, sidebar. I am on YouTube Music now, and it is absolutely, without a doubt, the best streaming platform I've had for music. I've been enjoying it. I don't know why other people
don't really get into it.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't sooner. I think so. Okay, I'm going on a tangent for the end of this episode. You can just hang up now if you don't care. Thank you for listening. You're the best.
I'm here for it.
The coolest thing that I think it does really well is if I find a really obscure song, I'm not familiar with the artist. Maybe it's this example I'm thinking of. It's not really a genre I normally listen to, but I really liked this particular song. What it does when it like continues to like just serve up stuff after that track, it'll serve you up songs that sound like that song. Not songs by like an artist that people also listen to who like this, or like this super random shit. It is like every at least other track was like, oh, this is the exact same style, the exact genre, different artist. And I'm like, yeah, do this. And it curates it. And I don't know what it's doing, but it's so smart. I've found more music in the last week using Apple Music and made playlists. Like I have a lifting playlist now. I have a playlist called Osaka Nights, which is just like a bunch of Japanese like artists that I've never heard of before doing like really chilled jazzy style stuff with hip hop, and it's super good. Oh,
sorry, I have to interrupt. You said Apple Music, but we are talking about YouTube Music.
YouTube Music. I used to be an Apple Music guy, and I just got off Spotify I was on Spotify for 10 months, and it was miserable. Right. Spotify does this horribly. Apple Music does it okay, but I didn't really use the discovery feature in Apple Music ever because it can allow you not to. Like you have to kind of like deliberately go into a discovery mode with Apple Music. This, if I just like search a song and I play it, it'll be like, all right, I'm going to just start giving you stuff then, bud.
Without you like hitting the like button?
No, so like if I just pick a song, a random song, it just continues to play stuff.
Yeah.
And it'll serve you up closer to what you're actually listening to than random. I felt like on Spotify, like let's make a really basic like thing that people would understand. Say I listen to like a Drake song. It would give you like a Lil Wayne tune that's like not the same. Like if you're listening to like Passion Fruit by Drake and you're like, da, da, ba, da, da, because I don't really like Drake, but I love Passion Fruit, then it's going to serve me up all this stuff that's like just those artists. And I was like, no, I don't want to listen to that stuff. I want a song that sounds like Drake's Passion Fruit. Like I want this like chill, like little electronic vibe, and it does that. It'll be cool. Like, oh, I'm going to keep it in this vibe then. It's like having a really good DJ at a wedding versus having a really bad DJ at a wedding. That's like, I know we just listened to this sexy-ass Marvin Gaye tune, but how about some Cotton Eye Joe? And you're like, Spotify, let's not. Can we not?
I need to use it that way a little more. And right now I use it to download playlists and play music offline, which is really handy as well. And I'm sure other like Spotify, I think you can do this too. And I think that's great. But that sounds really nice because I definitely understand where you're coming from. When an artist has a song that sounds different from most of the stuff they do, and you don't want to hear their other work, you just like that song. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And it's been working really well for that. And then I'm also an album guy. So I will just like, I want to listen to just this album front to back.
Yeah.
So you can download the playlists you want. You can download the albums that you listen to frequently. But then I will just go in there and I'll just like pick a tune, and then I'll find another person did something on Instagram or something. I'll just type that one song in, and then it'll be like this whole new world of music. And I've been exploring so much different stuff because their discoverability freaking rules. YouTube, you're doing a great thing with YouTube Music, and I think it's incredibly expensive for what it is, because I've been using ad blocker for so long, but now I don't even have ad blocker on my YouTube because I don't have to. Life is delicious. When I pull up a video on my phone, there's no ads.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
I've been on premium for like a year now, and it's totally worth it for me.
Absolutely worth it. I cannot believe I endured ads for so long on my phone and then just like endured bad music. Yeah. It's one more thing. What I don't like is that there are some small artists that only have stuff on like Spotify. So there's some exclusives that I've already ran into trouble with. However, the back end of that is there's a lot of like YouTube people that have made like mashups and things like that only exist on YouTube. And it also does a really good job. You can like add videos to a music playlist. So if it only exists on YouTube and you really like that version, maybe it's like a looped version. They're like, oh, it's this song for 10 minutes. You can just put that in your freaking playlist.
You can.
Bananas.
And they have this really cool feature where you can toggle between video and not in the middle of the song and go back and forth.
And it's almost seamless too. Like if you have it, I don't know if you can download both versions or whatever, but for sure if you're on fast enough internet, if you're like listening to the tune, you're like, oh, I want to see this music video real quick. It'll just be right where you turned it over and you're in the middle of the music video. That's so sick.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm super stoked about it. So if you're on the fence and you haven't tried it and it's been trying to get you to sign up for the free 1-month trial for the last 6 years, like it had been to me. Just give it a shot. Download the YouTube Music app on your phone. Give it a shot. It's pretty great. I'm a pretty picky guy, and I'm through the moon with it. I'm very happy with it. So
absolutely.
Anyway, that is all I have for you. David, do you have anything else to say?
That's it for me. I am super excited to go edit some product photography shots now.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to do.
That's awesome. So that's all I got for you. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Please, if you're still listening, submit some photos. We want to see your guys' work. We would love to chat about it. See you in the next one.
Bye, guys.